Throughout Holy Week, we normally spend our time going over the events leading up to the crucifixion. But for this morning's message, I thought that we would talk about the different places and appearances that Jesus encountered the disciples after the resurrection. So there are numerous sites that we will talk about and visit. It is very early in the morning, and most people are still asleep. The birds are chirping. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome have gotten up. They have gotten their things together. Maybe they couldn't sleep that night, or maybe they woke up early thinking of all the things that they had to do. And so they gathered their spices and they made their way along the path. What were they feeling? They were feeling sad. They were feeling exhausted because their Savior had been crucified. And so now they are on the way to the tomb to take care of his body. They had not made provisions of what to do when they got there, because they said to themselves, "Who will roll away the stone from the tomb?" It will be a big stone, and it will be too heavy for them.
When they arrived at the tomb, they looked up and they saw that the stone had been rolled away. It was extremely large. Entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting at the right, wearing a white robe, and they were amazed. And he said to them, "Do not be amazed. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who has been crucified. He has risen. He is not here. Behold, here is the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples, Peter, he is going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see him just as he told you." So by now it was a little bit brighter, and they went out, and they fled from the tomb. Trembling and astonishment had gripped them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid.
Peter is in the back. Jesus has risen. I have to tell the disciples. Jesus also appeared to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. So Peter, along with some other disciples, decided to go fishing. And after they had been out in the boat for a while, they had not caught anything. And somehow Jesus from the shore told them to cast the net on the other side. In the process, they caught fish. And one of the disciples said, "Hey, look, it's the Lord." At that point, Peter put on his clothes and jumped into the water and made it to shore. And when they reached the shore, there Jesus was waiting for them. And they had breakfast there on the shore, and they ate pieces of fish. At that point, Peter and Jesus had a conversation, and Jesus presented the question to Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter's reply was, "Of course, Lord, I love you." And then Jesus said, "Well, then feed my sheep." For a second time, Jesus asked and posed that question, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes, Lord, I love you." And Jesus replied, "Well, tend my lambs." And so the third time they went through that again. And thus that was in a different location in which it was chronicled in the book of John that Jesus appeared to the disciples at the seashore. Late that afternoon, Cleopas and one of his friends were walking along, going towards Emmaus, which was 7 miles from Jerusalem. And as they were walking and talking about the events of the previous few days, a stranger came alongside, and they did not recognize him. And the stranger had no idea what they were talking about. And they said to the stranger, "How is it that you do not know what has happened over the last couple days? Are you a visitor?" So they continued to talk and walk, and Jesus quoted a few scriptures to them. It got late in the afternoon, and they stopped by a town, and it was getting late, so they invited Jesus to stay with them. And at that time, they sat down for a meal, and Jesus broke bread, and suddenly they recognized him in the breaking of the bread. And they said to one another, "Were not our hearts burning when we're talking along the path?" And so thus the resurrected Lord was revealed to Cleopas and his friend on the walk to Emmaus. At the end of Mark's Gospel, Jesus summons the 11 to meet him up in the mountain in order to give final instructions. This would be one of his appearances to the disciples post-resurrection. So I'm beginning the mountain trail. I am almost at the top. It's an amazing climb. But for Jesus, if he calls us to do it, we climb the mountain. I am at the top. The experiences throughout the disciples' time with Jesus had many mountaintop experiences, and I'm sure this last one with the 11 was very memorable, especially after the resurrection. What a glorious view, what a glorious time. I wonder if they had the view of the Sea of Galilee, something like this. In all the events leading up to the events of Good Friday, Jesus seemed so emotional and so engaged in interacting with people, and the people were all in a daze and caught up in the emotion as well. But after the resurrection, and in the events where Jesus revealed himself to the various disciples, he was not as emotional. He was subdued and almost calm and almost just assured and confident. So what is the message of all of that? Well, first of all, the emotions, the excitement, the joy, the exuberance of the resurrected Lord is not for Jesus to be joyful, but for each of us to be joyful, and for each of us to show the emotion and share the emotion. And it's up to us to do all the legwork, whether it's from the seashore to the city, the mountain, to the ocean. So we are the feet and the hands of Jesus. And as we go out, we share the excitement, we share the joy, we show the spontaneity and the surprise of the resurrection wherever we go. So we can be bearers and carriers and witnesses of Jesus' resurrection. So happy Easter. Peter's in the back. Jesus is risen. I have to tell the disciples.